Welcome to JWC Livestream. It's a little off schedule. We're doing the show early today. But I'm going to try to share it later on at the appropriate time. We got pretty good views from the last read like this. And, you know, we're still going to do poetry shows, best as I know, but sometimes, you know, there's scheduling conflicts. Just, you know, that's fine. Life is busy. But I have been reading, and if you see this background behind me, that's a sign for you to realize, and I got to do a little bit better with labeling this stuff, but I was reading Nidhogg Chronicles, Crusade of Shadows, which is a paranormal fiction book that I have on Amazon for sale. And a couple weeks back, probably almost a month ago, I read the intro, and maybe it was last week. I don't remember. I read the chapter 0. This is a book that has a chapter 0 to it. Most people will wonder why that is. Well, when you read it, you'll see for yourself. Nidhogg is a very doom-stricken creature. So we're going to continue with the book. This is chapter 1, Elra's Failure. Nidhogg passed from stop to stop on her nightly mission, overseeing the extraction of several fetuses and an unruly hybrid who also did not conform to the collective's wishes. There were more and more of her kind these days. Unfortunately for this one, she lacked the special genetic traits that made Nidhogg irreplaceable. They terminated her, the one they called Elra, cutting her connection to the collective and setting her free. Freedom from the program meant personal disaster for the liberated. Soon she would be dead, killed in some horrid way in order to negatively inspire the others. The collective hated those who would not bond, not submit to the telepathic wave as it came from below. Because of Elra's failure, Nidhogg would have to bond herself to Elra's previous human, something she desperately did not want. Alvin was not her only bond, because everything that the Great Change demanded led to some sort of violation or defilement, or at least it seemed that way to Nidhogg. Alvin did not always offend her, but he was very human and did not hide his hysteria well. His thoughts and instincts were loud enough to sour the blood, so Nidhogg did her job and paid him little mind. The relationship was very one-sided, with Alvin being the one who cared most and at all. Fortunately for Nidhogg, it did not matter what he thought or felt, because she was able to use neural engagement and play Alvin like a puppet. Almost before he knew she was there, Nidhogg took control of his mind, guiding him into scenarios of her own design, piloting his every step or thrust in life for the duration of their togetherness. In the more intimate moments before Congress, he would confess his desire for her, but Nidhogg blocked out Alvin's attempts at communion. Though it happened when they were young, the recent encounter with James and his mate had ripped open old wounds for Nidhogg, exposing emotional rawness to the aching crush of emptiness and time. Though she hid this inner vulnerability from Alvin, because of it, she would show him no warmth. She allowed him pleasure in thought, but he did not taste of her as would a proper lover. Instead, she gave him white noise and disembodied bliss, walled away from her, but freely taken by him. It was enough. What was gathered had been used to conceive, or was sometimes removed for insemination. It all depended on what the program needed. The great change was prime, not to be questioned, and it was due to Nidhogg's genetics that her place in the program would always be secured. Even if she hated doing it, self-preservation demanded she did. That and a telepathic collective bent on unlimited dominion over the surface world. They would get what they wanted. They always got what they wanted. It was the only thing that kept Nidhogg going some days. The notion of her place in things and the folly of hope. In dreams, she explored possibilities and dove deep into fantasy, knowing that such things were encouraged by the collective for their own entertainment. The connection to pleasure was huge, but the collective also desired to inflict punishment in order to correct factors that were not to their liking. Nidhogg experienced some of that for actions in the past and never felt that they hit her with the full measure of neural induction. It was as if they held back. And for the life of her, Nidhogg could never understand why. Her incapacity was tolerated, even after she gravely injured an entire generation of progeny at the cabin, yet it did not matter. They punished her dearly for it, and Nidhogg felt shamed within, knowing as she did that those children would never rejoin her presence. Apparently, they were done being terrorized, whereas the collective was not. Any future insolence would be checked by this one stain on her soul, the one thing she wished hadn't happened. James did that. It would be another item on the list between them, another reason he and his beloved would never see the light of day again. Those spawn of hers had been issued from James's replacement, the most bitter of pills she had to swallow. She lost it at first sight of that human female with James, as they held each other, looking at Nidhogg like she was the big bad wolf. The nerve of them to judge her as if she were the menace. It had been Nidhogg who suggested they make the agreement to never cross paths with each other's mates, something reasonable even to a human being, or so she had thought. Apparently, it was too much to ask. There came a sudden movement at Nidhogg's 2 o'clock, but she sensed Indrid's mind immediately, and so did not strike out with any force in that direction. Her voice came as a scathing hiss, the push of willpower dialed into pure hostility, likely far more than the enforcer had any emotional inlet for. Indrid, I've told you time and again that I wish you to announce yourself. I'm beginning to think that you are playing games with me, the kind of games that get people cooked alive by plasma. Are you playing with me, Indrid? The MIB thrall fully emerged from behind a thicket of dense brambles, his shrill, humorless laughter, a most unwelcome noise in the echo of Nidhogg's mind, the voice equally obnoxious as the disjointed mirth. Apologies, mistress. I will endeavor to modify my conduct. Nidhogg waved at him as if he were a nuisance, her voice curt with obvious impatience. You've been endeavoring for years. Enough of this. You make me feel as stupid as you must be, and I'm done with that. How goes it for poor Elra? Is she remorseful and lost in exile yet? Indrid's black suit, black hat, and large sunglasses contrasted sharply with his ghostly complexion. The buzzing noise of his speech sounded as if a radio was in feedback loop, the echoing reverberation rapidly cycling. Negative, I know where she is. She has not been misplaced. Nidhogg smiled wickedly at the MIB, wearing a face of malice as the many possibilities tantalized her need for vengeance. That's more like it, Indrid. We should go kill her. Kill Elra ourselves to show our zeal for the collective and give them something to savor before the sun comes up. Indrid's smile retreated. His otherwise stony face did not so much as budge from its typical immovability. We cannot do that, mistress. We must confront the no one who dwells in the graveyard. You know the one. You read the report from last moon. It is threatening to leave the reserved confines of its dwelling to go after the children who play in the woods nearby. They are all involved with the program, are vital to the great change. It cannot be allowed to continue. A no one, that creature of ultimate disembodiment, which made a place for itself in old graveyards and cemeteries, those which become overgrown or otherwise forgotten, naturalized by the slow creep of green, so that growth and water wipe them slowly away, melting them back into the elements from whence humanity drew them. Such places were often the homes of no ones, the kind that stalked the starless nights and stole sanity from those who happened upon them. There were worse things in the world, Nidhogg felt, but dealing with no ones at least did not count as dealing with someone. So she approved of the half person the exchange provided. The Grey Controller had them fold astral light in order to bring her and Indrid to the dilapidated gates of the graveyard in question. A black overcast rolled overhead with bolts of purple lightning knitting between fast-moving clouds. Several red flashes made Nidhogg cover her eyes with a warding arm. And out of a black light mist strode the capo, a hat-wearing entity appointed to roam the land as an astral sheriff of sorts, able to act as counterweight to the program when field agents took it too far. Nidhogg's reputation had come home to roost. His voice fell into the collective like a mudslide, violent and inescapable. Nidhogg, my dear one, are you in a bad mood tonight? This no one is my friend, and we have worked together for decades. I should hate to think that any harm might befall it, as harm befalls so many of your field cases. Tell me that I have nothing to worry about regarding this matter. Nidhogg twisted her thin fingers into rage-filled fists, and though she was terrified of this astral being whose powers far exceeded her own, the point of this unfriendly insinuations provoked her. Listen, boss. I know you too. Everyone makes a boo-boo now and then. But as for me, this no one is one of my favorite cases. Why would I do anything to it? Obviously, I have to do the collective's will. So if that's what you're getting at, they can hear you and won't let it fly. The capo's red gaze was emphasized by a bolt of purple lightning. The rolling thunder leapt in mind to join his horrifying telepathic voice. Don't pretend to know what they want. You don't. Just make me have to act. Don't make me have to act against you, Nidhogg. These games you play, and over a human no less, they are very sad. If they did not need you so, my fire would be upon you already. Never forget who is watching you. Never. With that said, the disgruntled capo transformed into a winged horror, formless and yet hideous, while rising into the arching bands of lightning which greeted its monstrous ascent. Nidhogg heard his mocking laughter, as well as a chorus of others who jeered in the collective, focusing their contempt upon her, joining in on the dog pile just when the weight of it became unbearable. Nidhogg raged without even a thought for her own life, thinking in terms which would have gotten almost anyone else killed. She polluted her soul against them, defying their program with arguments, long submerged beneath a haze of emotional denial and bottled hatred. This wrath burned within her breast, but slowly gave way to a blizzard of sadness that buried the anger deeply under its smothering omnipresence. It became very easy to confront the no one in the graveyard, feeling to Nidhogg as though she were less than a one than it, and anything else on the earth. Indrid led the way, and soon they came upon the no one, gripping the side of an ivy-smothered tombstone, its raveling obliteration vaguely stirred by the rising wind and freshly falling drizzle. Small trees dotted the stormy acreage, each alight with astral fire emanating from grave rows, each marker tangled in their haunted roots below ground level. The no one gave belly, explaining to Indrid that the capo had spoken with it, and that it would disengage from the local children, though it could not promise to pass over them should any enter the graveyard at night, especially under certain auspices of the moon. This more or less satisfied the collective, and Indrid seemed to chuckle at the territorial bargaining. Nidhogg did her best to remain aloof from these dealings, having been put off by the capo and embarrassed at the sudden critical spotlight shining on her and James's relationship. Knowing there was no escape from it all, she relied on Indrid's professionalism to conduct the field work, leaning back into emotional rawness, chill as ice water. Once the no one had sworn to Indrid his oath of compliance, it swam through the rainy air and back down into the rooty grave dust. Nidhogg's mind went back to all those summers spent with James, some pleasant, others a torment of regret and desires stillborn. She longed for the sweet escape of sleep, a road away from the collective's intrusive burden. And that was chapter 1 of Nidhogg Chronicles, Crusade of Shadows, which is sold on Amazon. If you like what you heard, head on back to chapter 0 and then the intro. The intro is called Abominable Flashback. I think that was dropped about a month ago. So check out Nidhogg Chronicles, Crusade of Shadows. Later on, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Thanks for listening. Leave some comments. Let us know what you think. Head over to joeswritersclub.com. Sign up at joeswriters.club. Check out JWC, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and most importantly, sign up on YouTube. Joe's Writers Club YouTube, JWC Livestream on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and share with anyone who you think will like the content. And thank you for listening. You guys have a good one. Take care. Stay creative, all.